So remember, we don't sit here by priority, we sit by fan volume. So if you're not comfortable with a fan, a lot of air blowing on you, have to move to a lower voluminous area where you won't get as much fan volume. But I know I like it when it stays on high because it gets pretty hot, either here or up there. So this is the 5th lesson on Islam, and it'll be the last lesson on Islam. And then I'm going to look at the cults a little bit. And let me say this about that. I really don't think that the way that we can minister to people that are in any kind of alternative belief system is to tell them what they're doing wrong. I really think the only way that you can minister to people that are involved in an alternative belief system is try to tell them what Jesus is going to do right for their lives. So when we condemn people, it makes it very difficult for us to minister to them. So let's keep that in mind as we try to figure out ways to reach people in the world that are lost. But as we closed our last system, we had begun to look a little bit at the history of Islam in the post-Mohammed era. And I'm not going to spend too much time here, but I want to close that up first thing this evening. And after Muhammad died, there were many, many early converts to Islam in the areas around the initial influence of the Muslim world. And a lot of them were Christians. Syria was a country where there was, within 100 years of Muhammad's death, Syria was dominated by Muslims. Syria would have been considered a Christian nation at that time. We might not recognize their Christianity, but still they would have been recognized as a Christian country. I think of Ethiopia, or in Egypt, Egypt, the Copts, the Coptics, Christians. They had a little bit more money, which forestalled their conversion to Islam a little bit longer. But eventually those nations, especially Egypt, became dominated by the Muslims. And the Muslims had a very, very aggressive expansion not long after they came into being. And they ran through Europe pretty successfully until 732, I think it was, the Battle of Tours, where they were stopped at France. They got all the way to France. And remember, the Muslims who are the Moors of Spain? Those are Muslims. So they got all the way to Spain. And even after the Battle of Tours, there were numerous skirmishes between Christians and Muslims in Spain. Into that picture of expanding their dominance in the world, the Roman Catholic Church stepped in. And under Pope Urban II, URBAN, the Crusades began. And what were the Crusades? What were they all about? Well, yeah, the Roman Catholic Church wanted to take back the Holy Land. Because at this time, by then, the Muslims were in possession of the Holy Land. So, and yes, the Spanish Inquisition is intertwined in that process too, but I've always considered it to be an expeditionary war. One of those wars where you kind of they send a series of expeditions into the Middle East to try to wrest away the Holy Land. And the Holy Land, Jerusalem, is an unusual place because it's a significant religious site for the three, what we would call Abrahamic religions of the world. It's significant for the Jews, the Christians, and the Muslims. All three consider Jerusalem to be central to their belief system. Of course, for the Jews, for Judaism and for Christianity, it's very significant. It's the for the Muslims, it's the third holiest site that they hold in their belief system. Mecca being one, Medina's two, and then Jerusalem is three. So we could spend several lessons on this time in their history. But tonight, I've told you before that I wanted to begin a comparison, and we'll probably finish it tonight if I have time, between the 12th Imam and the Antichrist. And that's what I'm going to talk about mainly tonight, comparing the two of them. And the 12th Imam can go by another name, and that would be the Mahdi. And the Mahdi is a significant figure in the prophecy of Islam. And the word Mahdi means the guided one. And there's most Muslims would say the 12th Imam and the Mahdi are the same person. And the Mahdi is going to return to the world one day, and when he returns, he's going to do these things. He's going to, in their own writings, it says, he will rid the world of error. And to rid the world of error for a Muslim means they will remove all non-Muslim thinking from the world. If you're not think like a Muslim, you are in error. They will right injustice and tyranny. And the Muslims believe that alongside the Mahdi, or the 12th Imam, will be Jesus. Jesus is going to be his assistant in this process. So, the 12th Imam, or Mahdi, I've studied this a lot more now, was born a long time ago. But they're waiting for him now. And how that works is, and it depends some on which sect you're looking at and what belief system you're looking at. But sometime between the 600 and 800 AD, and most people would say 868 AD, the 12th Imam was born. And when he was 5 years old, most would say he was put away. Remember I talked to you that the Muslims believe that Jesus Christ never died on the cross. He was removed, and he's in suspended animation. And he's going to come back with this 12th Imam. Well, this 12th Imam either went or was taken to a place where God has hidden him. And he's going to come back during the end times of the world to lead the Muslims in conquering the world. The thing about the Mahdi is that he has become very, very important, especially for the Shias. And who are the Shias? Well, the Shiites, are the ruling people of Iraq and Iran. And in Iran, it's Ahmadinejad. Most of you are familiar with that's the president of Iran. And I'll talk a little bit more about him. But the Mahdi is coming, and his coming will bring with it Judgment Day. That's what the Muslims believe. So, again, we have so really what you have is we have the three most significant Abrahamic belief systems in the world, all waiting for a second coming. Okay? We are waiting for Jesus to come. The Jews are waiting for their Messiah to come. And the Muslims are waiting for the Mahdi to come, the 12th Imam. Now, the 12th Imam has a prerequisite before he returns. There has to be a catastrophic world event before he occurs. And I guess you could correlate that to some of what transpires during the tribulation. But in Iran, the president of Iran, who really is a puppet figure for the Ayatollah. You remember the Ayatollah back in the 70s? That's the one that took all the Americans hostage. Well, this is that Ayatollah. I think this is his replacement. I think he's been there that long. But Ahmadinejad and all the people in the inner circle of Iran have signed a contract with the Mahdi, telling them that they're going to do everything within their power to bring him to the earth. So in their mind, that means that they have to have a catastrophic event that will bring him to the earth. That's really why people should be concerned about Iran getting a nuclear weapon, because these people are religiously, they are very zealous, and they believe that they will be fulfilling their religious requirement to help this guy, to help the Mahdi come. Now, Ahmadinejad is an interesting figure. He spoke, the first time he really spoke in public was at the United Nations in 2005. And when he spoke, he wrote about it later on. When he got up to speak, a lot of people left. The United States left, Israel left, I think England left, France, Germany. But Ahmadinejad says that when he spoke at the United Nations in 2005, he was bathed in an aura of light. And that there was a change in the atmosphere in the room. And when he spoke, no one blinked. Everybody was so enthralled by what he had to say that they were zeroed in on him. And this is the president of a country that's soon going to have a nuclear weapon. Of course, he and his compatriots refer to us as the great Satan. And they, as I said, believe it's their responsibility to bring the Mahdi into fruition. Now, some people might disagree with me, and maybe the disagreement would be about words, but I consider the Mahdi to be a Messiah-like figure. And as a Messiah-like, when you use the word Messiah, that's a very Judeo-Christian word, but it describes the Mahdi, in my mind, perfectly. So I want to take a little bit deeper look at who the Mahdi is, and then after that we'll start doing the comparison between him and the Antichrist. First and most prominently, the Mahdi has to be a direct descendant of Muhammad. That's what they believe, that this person who has been put away since the 800s and will someday return will be a direct descendant of Muhammad. He will be a universal leader for all of the Muslims. He will lead every Muslim in the world. There will be no more Muslim sects. He will cause all the Muslims to join together under one person. And he will restore, and this is a significant word, he will restore the Islamic Caliphate. Now, the Islamic Caliphate was the name that the Muslims used for their expansion into other parts of the world. And the Shias are calling for another Caliphate, and the one that owns the Caliphate is, the one that runs the Caliphate is the Caliph. And the Mahdi would be the Caliph. He would be the significant leader of every Muslim in the world, and he would then begin the process of reestablishing the Caliphate, to reestablishing their control in the world. The Caliph would be, if the Muslims had a pope, that's who the Caliph would be. So if you think Pope for Roman Catholicism, think Caliph for the Islamic belief. And he would be seen as a direct agent for Allah on earth. And we know who Allah is. Allah is the moon god of the religions that preceded Islam in that part of the world. So when Muslims call for the return of the Caliph, they're essentially calling for the Mahdi to come and be installed as the leader of the nation. And this, as I said, the Mahdi will be ruler not only over Islam, but they believe the Mahdi will be the ruler of the entire world. That he will dominate the entire world and take over. And it doesn't matter what your religious belief is. He will be the leader of everyone and everything. He will lead a world revolution. And in that world revolution, he will establish a new world order, Have you ever heard those words? New World Order. And this New World Order will be Islamic in nature. Now, his army will carry black flags as they run across the face of the earth, wiping everybody out. And the Muslim faith has two flags. You're familiar, probably you've seen the white flag with the crescent moon on it. That's their governmental flag. They have another flag, which is black, just so happens. And that flag was a flag that Muhammad was kicked out of Mecca. And he went and started professing. He went and started proselytizing, and he got a bunch of adherents. He came back with an army of 10,000 men. And he came into Mecca, and they all carried black flags, and on the back flag was written one word: punish. And he found everybody that was against him, and he killed them all. He wiped out a vast majority of the population at that time. It was either you bowed to him or they chopped off your head.
So what year was that?
That would have been 1640-ish, 45, or 645. Because that was around his time of, that's when he started having his visions, was about 640. They kicked him out, probably 648, 649, somewhere in there. So, the Mahdi, he's going to control the world. He's going to control the wind, the rain, the climate, and all these things I'm telling you is according to their holy literature. And under the world, guess what will happen? Under his rule, the world will prosper. And you know what? Because the world is prospering, people will give their alliance to him. Sound familiar? People will fall in line with what they teach. One of the most unusual things about him, I found out that he's going to be an excellent archaeologist. And he's going to go out and he's going to find some Bible scrolls that have never been discovered before. And he's going to, he's even supposedly going to find the Ark of the Covenant. You know, Indiana Jones couldn't find it, but this guy, he's going to find it. And I think those things are going to happen because that will make him more palatable to the Christians. Because there'll be a bunch of Christians that will convert over to his way of belief because it'll make them comfortable in their life. And it's going to be one of those deals, convert or what? You're going to be eliminated. So with that information, then I want to start comparing the two because you can already tell they sound a lot alike. But the Antichrist, most people that haven't even read the Bible they're familiar with the word or the name Antichrist. And simply put, the Antichrist is Satan's primary agent on the earth in the last days. And he's only referred to that by that name one time in 1 John 2, I think it is. But there's numerous references to him throughout the word. In various names, he's called the beast, the abomination that causes desolation, or in some versions it'll call it the abomination of desolation. He's called the desolator, the man of sin, the man of lawlessness, son of destruction, the Assyrian. He's called the oppressor, the king of Babylon, and even that name Gog. Have you ever heard that name Gog? That's in a famous book. The Empire of Gog is in the Ovid. I don't know how many of you read the Ovid, but there's a lot of religious names in the Ovid. And he's going to lead an empire. The Antichrist will lead an empire that has never been seen before on the face of the earth. He will be the dominant figure in everything. And the description of him, probably the best description is from Daniel 7 and 8, where it says, I was considering the horns, and there was another horn, a little one, coming up among him, and that little one pushed out 3 horns and plucked them out by the roots. And then in this horn there were eyes, it says, eyes of a man, and the mouth speaking pompous words, I think one of the versions says. That's a pretty good description. Here's this figure that's going to be so strong it'll just push these other horns out of the way. And we'll be looking at a lot of these things as we begin our Revelation study on Sunday night. So into this, it's obvious that this individual is beyond challenge on earth. And the Antichrist, in a political and military way, is unparalleled. He will cause the world to join together politically and militarily like it has never done it before. He will have at his disposal a majority of the military in the world. And the ones that are on his disposal will be so insignificant it won't matter hardly at all. So, and it is said that, so into that mindset, he'll preside over everything. So beyond the political and military leadership, because I've already told you that in many ways resembles the Mahdi. The next area I wanted to look at is the spiritual leadership of the Antichrist and the Mahdi. The Antichrist will have he will be the spiritual authority that will be acknowledged over the entire world. And he will usher in what we call, what has been called in the word, one world religion. Okay? There'll be one religion for the entire world. And he's going to create a religious system, and he will create the way to enforce that system. How does he enforce it? By the mark of the beast is how he enforces it. And we could do a study of 666 and how 666 pertains to Muslim beliefs, and that gets pretty interesting too, because the number 666 is very, very prominent in Islamic beliefs. But much of the concept in regards to the worship associated with the Antichrist, Revelation 13:4 speaks to, they worship the dragon who gave authority to the beast, and they worship the beast, saying, who is like the beast? Who is able to make war with him? And then later on in verse 8, all who dwell on the earth will worship him, whose names have not been written in the book of life of the Lamb slain from the foundation of the world. In other words, everybody that's not saved is going to worship one person. Everybody. It doesn't matter if you're a Buddhist, if you're a existentialist, it doesn't matter who you are. If you're not saved, you're going to be worshiping the Antichrist. So we know the recipient of this worship is the Antichrist and his puppet master, of course, Satan, who accomplishes everything through him. And the Mahdi is going to be, when you read about the Mahdi, he's going to be the same type of individual. He will, according to the holy writings of Islam, he will cause people to renounce their faith and worship Allah. And he's going to establish, as I said, a new world order based upon the religion of Islam. And Islam will be the only religion that will be allowed to be practiced on the face of the earth, according to the Mahdi. And these two figures then are very, very closely related when you look at their religious significance. In fact, their greatest desire, the Antichrist comes to do one thing, to draw people away from Christ. That's who he is. And the Mahdi will do the same exact thing, draw people away from Christ. And you know, Islam is a direct contradiction in their writings to who God is and to who Jesus is. Jesus is a prophet. He's not the Son of God, and we know that. So, in this area, they are both very, very close. If you put a picture up of the Mahdi and the Antichrist as far as the end times religious authority on the world, they'll be very close to each other. The next thing I want to look at is how they treat the Jews and the Christians. And in Revelations, especially chapter 12 and 13, is full of rich prophecy and symbolic language about this, the persecution of the Jews and the Christians. And Daniel saw that the Antichrist would be one who would wage a successful war against the Christians. In Daniel 7:25, it says, he shall speak pompous words against the Most High, against God, shall persecute the saints of the Most High, and shall intend to change times and law. Keep that in your mind. And then the saints shall be given into his hand for a time and times and half a time. And that's we'll study those times later. So it's obvious that Satan intends to target Jews and Christians, the saints, it says. We know that as Satan, believers were considered to be saints. And the Mahdi is called in Islamic tradition to convert Jews and saints and in a special way. He doesn't mess with other people of other belief systems. But he treats Jews and Christians in a special way. And how he does it, this is a quote from an Ayatollah. His name is Ibrahim Imani. He says, the Mahdi will offer the religion of Islam to the Jews and Christians. If they accept it, they will be spared. Otherwise, they will be killed. That's what the Mahdi offers to Jews and Christians. Here's a quote from the Hadith, which I found very interesting. It says, the last hour, which means the end time, would not come unless the Muslims will fight against the Jews, and the Muslims would kill them until the Jews would hide themselves behind a stone or a tree, and a stone or a tree would say, Muslim, or the servant of Allah, there's a Jew behind me, come and kill him. The stones and the trees are going to talk to the Muslims and tell them the Jews are hiding, come and get them. That's a quote from the Hadith, which is the second most reverend book in the Muslim belief system. So that when you look at the Antichrist and you look at the Mahdi, they both have a very specific way they're going to handle Jews and Christians. Now in Daniel 7:25, we'll talk a little bit about prophecies. It says, and shall intend to change times and law. Change times. How many calendars are there in the world? Significant calendars. There's 3. There's the Judaic calendar, the Buddhist calendar, and the Islamic calendar. Now the Buddhists don't force anybody to do anything. But this quote from Daniel 7:25 says that this individual is going to change times and law. What's the Buddhist law? The Islamic law system? Sharia law. What are they trying to do in America? They're already starting in Michigan. They've started to. They are, and in fact, there will be more votes during this election system allowing Muslims in certain communities to practice Sharia law on other Muslims. And they tell them, it's okay. Don't worry, Americans. We're not going to mess with you. We want to judge our own people by our own justice system. Okay? So they want to change the times and the laws. So now let's look at these two guys, the Mahdi and the Antichrist, in regards to their military actions, specifically against Israel, and then in regards to the Temple Mount. And the Bible tells us that the Antichrist is going to lead a multi-nation coalition against Israel, specifically against Jerusalem. And after that attack, he's going to set up his throne in God's temple. Paul speaks about that in 2 Thessalonians 2:4. Now we know the location approximately of Solomon's temple. It's on Mount Moriah. There's an A theory, a B theory, and a C theory on where the temple is on Mount Moriah, but it's somewhere on that high place on this mountain ridge, what they call the mountain because the temple was burned down in 70 AD by the Romans. So originally, Jerusalem was called the city of Jebus, Jebus, I think that's how you pronounce it. And somebody came in, it was just one of these towns, and somebody came in and conquered a significant Christian figure. That would be David. And David named it Jerusalem. It became known initially as the city of David. That's where he set up his headquarters. First Chronicles 11 speaks to that. And we know of the existence of Jerusalem in ancient times as far back as Abraham, because that's where Abraham visited Melchizedek. That's in Genesis 14. So Jerusalem is an interesting place because of its significance. Because there's no reason for it to be significant. There's not any trade routes that run through there. It's not militarily a strategic place per se, but for over 4,000 years, it's been the most important religious location on the face of the earth. Now, Jerusalem lies in a low range of hills that are the Mediterranean Sea is about 30 miles from Jerusalem. And they call these places Mount Moriah is where the temple is. And what's significant about Mount Moriah? Moriah. That's where Abraham took Isaac to sacrifice him. Okay? So that's the beginning of the significance of this geographic location. And like I said, they call it a mountain, but it's not really much of a mountain. And if you travel not far to the east, you come down off of these hills, I call them hills, and you end up going down to the Dead Sea, and the Dead Sea's like over 12,000 feet below sea level. So, but Jerusalem is significant because God chose it. And He has had and always has had special purposes for the city of Jerusalem. And like I said, the Temple Mount area is about 45 acres. Ron, what does 45 acres look like? If I was trying to think, what's something that would take up 45 acres? How many acres is Walmart on? 20. So the Temple Mount, okay, is like twice as big, maybe a little bit more than 2 Walmarts. Have you been to the Temple Mount? Does that sound about right? Well, you don't get to walk up on top, do you?
You go in the temple.
Do you?
And there's inside the temple there's covering and you can get in and it's rock.
So it's not a real big place, but like I said, there's several theories about where the temple is actually on this, what is now a plateau because man has made it a plateau. And just to the east of it is Mount Zion. These hills, these mountains are like 2,400 feet high above sea level. Mount Graham is over 10,000 to give you a comparison. So we would call them hills, I think, over here. But like I said, over to the east is Mount Zion, and there used to be a big valley in between Mount Zion and Mount Moriah, but that valley over the years has been filled in with trash. And now there's really not a valley there anymore. In fact, when you go, have you seen pictures of the Wailing Wall where the Hasidics stick their prayers in the cracks of the Wailing Wall? Well, a majority of the Wailing Wall is below ground level. That's how much rubble over the years has built up in this particular, Jerusalem. That area of the world has been occupied by people for a long, long time. That valley is called the Tropian Valley, or the Valley of the Cheesemakers. That's another name for that valley. And to the west of Mount Moriah is the Mount of Olives. Significant. Jesus ascended there. Remember what happens on the east side of the Mount of Olives. During Islamic judgment, every Islam in the world will go before the giant scales and be judged on the east side of Mount Olives. their belief. And if you get 51% good, you go to paradise. If you get 51% bad or more, you go to their hell, which is probably the same as the paradise. But, and then significant things around the Temple Mount area. On Mount Zion is the Church of the Mission. The Institute of the Holy Land Studies is there. What's called the traditional tomb of David is there. So, that's the end of that geography lesson. I'll continue with the comparison here. But today, on the Temple Mount is, as I said earlier, there's two mosques actually on top of the Temple Mount. And as I said, this is the third holiest place in Islamic belief. And there's a lot of speculation. I don't know, I've watched some of these shows I told you on TV where the Jews are getting back in underneath the mountain. They've got some tunnels and stuff in there. And like I've told you before, the Jews are prepared. They've been preparing to move into the temple, to build. They're getting all their tools, because there's a lot of stuff that is directly prescribed in the Word of God that's to be used in the temple. And the Jews have been preparing for this time when they believe that they will have the opportunity to reoccupy the temple. And based upon what 2 Thessalonians 4 says, it sounds like there's going to be another temple built. Or they clean out the old one, or something's going to happen where they will be able to reoccupy that. And I'm going to talk about that in a minute. But this is where, this rebuilt temple is where the Antichrist is going to set up his rulership. And if you want, you can look at Matthew 24. But beginning in verse 15, it says, "Therefore, when you see the abomination of desolation," or some Bibles will see the abomination that causes desolation, spoken of by Daniel the prophet standing in the holy place, and then it says, "Whoever reads, let him understand. Then let those who are in Judea flee to the mountains. Let him who is on the housetop not go down to take anything out of his house. And let him who is in the field not go back to get his clothes. But woe to those who are pregnant, to those who are nursing babes in those days. And pray that your flight may not be in winter or on the Sabbath. For then there will be great tribulation, such as has not been seen since the beginning of the world until this time. No, nor shall ever be. And unless those days were shortened, no flesh would be saved. But for the elect's sake, those days will be shortened. And so what happens is this is a deembarkation point in end times theology. Up to this point, everybody has said, "Oh, you're such a wonderful person. We're prospering, the weather's good, everything's fine, everybody's got all the food they need to eat, everything's good." And then the guy goes to the temple and says, "It's time for you to worship your new God," and that's me. And then what happens? Then the Great Tribulation starts. And that's a great with a big G, and the tribulation with a big T. And so, at that time, the Antichrist will reveal his true nature. And then the persecution of the Jews and the Christians will begin in earnest. Now, when you look at the Mahdi to see what the Mahdi's up to, he, according to Islamic scripture, will attack and conquer Jerusalem in order that the new Islamic religion can rule from there. He will rule from Jerusalem, the Mahdi. And he will also have a campaign against the Jews and the Christians. And again, from the Hadith, it says, "They will abolish the leadership of the Jews and the Romans," that's us, "and put an end to the Satans who spit evil into people and cause corruption in the earth." That's who we are. We spit evil into people and cause corruption. So, you can ask yourself, what about the 7-year peace treaty? You're familiar, the Antichrist. He's going to initiate a peace treaty with Israel after he rises to power. The Mahdi will initiate the 4th and final treaty between the Romans and the Muslims, it says in the Hadith. And the Romans is the West. Do you remember Nicholas Berg? He was the American Jewish businessman who was beheaded on YouTube, for lack of a better phrase. In fact, you can see the Muslims beheading Nicholas Berg today on the internet. It's still on there, and the people that have it on there say that they have it on there so you can understand how brutal these people are. Because when they cut off this guy's head, they just don't cut it off. They saw his head off. It's one of the most brutal things. I could watch it for about 4 or 5 seconds, and then I had to stop watching it. But in that beheading, there's a guy that reads a Muslim manifesto. Of course, all their faces are covered because they're all cowards. And he reads this Muslim manifesto, and in that manifesto, he addresses President Bush, who was the president at that time. And he calls President Bush, "You dog of the Romans." So the Mahdi will sign a peace treaty, the fourth peace treaty it's called, with the Romans that will last, guess how long? 7 years. And the Mahdi will sign the peace treaty with someone who is a descendant of Moses' brother. Who's that? Aaron. And what's significant about Aaron? Well, from him comes the priestly lineage, the tribal Levi. Most theologians that have studied this, most that I have read, believe that when the peace treaty is signed with a descendant of Aaron, the Mahdi will tell the Jews, "Go and refurbish your temple." Because one of the hardest things to understand about this prophecy is, how do the Muslims ever allow the Jews to rebuild their temple or to refurbish their temple? But when you look at this prophecy, you can see how the Mahdi would tell the descendant of Aaron, who he signs the peace treaty with, because of who you are, because of who I am, I'm going to allow you to reoccupy the temple. And they sign and consummate this peace treaty, which is then, after 3.5 years, broken. And then I've only got 7 or 8 minutes. I'm going to make one more comparison, and then I'll be done. It's the idea of the rider on the white horse. Are you familiar with the rider on the white horse? And like I said, we're going to be talking about all this on Sunday nights. But in Revelation 6:1-2, it says, "Now I saw when the Lamb opened one of the seals, and I heard one of the 4 living creatures saying with a voice like thunder, 'Come and see.' And I looked, and behold, a white horse, and he who sat on it had a bow, and a crown was given to him, and he went out conquering and to conquer." Now, the appearance of the individual on the white horse, after that, calamities begin to befall the earth at an incredible rate. And the white horse rider is who? He's the Antichrist, because what does Jesus ride when he comes? White horse. So what does the Antichrist ride? A white horse. He's a copycat. He's a counterfeiter. Always remember that. He's a counterfeiter. When you read things about who he is and why he doesn't, think he's a counterfeiter. He's an imposter. And he comes with what does he have? A bow? But does he have arrows? You know why? Because he comes in peace. He comes and ushers in peace. But then, it says, what does it say? He says, he went out conquering and to conquer. So he comes in peace initially, but then his true agenda is seen. In this figure of Revelation 6, I've quoted a lot of the Hadith and Quran scriptures. But this last reference to the figure on the white horse, I can't quote any other Islamic sources. You know why? Because the Muslims quote Revelation 6, and they say that is the Mahdi. The Mahdi rides a horse with a bow, there's no arrows, and then he comes to conquer and conquers. And in modern day theology, if you can call it theology, that's who the Ayatollahs are teaching the Shiite Muslims. That is our Mahdi. He's coming to save the world for you and for me, is what they tell each other. He is, in their theology, their long-awaited Savior. Okay? That's all I got. But yes, Pat. I don't know. She said, why haven't we ever heard this before? Have any of you ever heard this before?
Yeah, I have.
It's there. Well, what we hear is we all worship the same God. Remember? I've heard that. I think I heard a president say that. They're actually peace-loving people. I've heard that numerous times. Actually, Islam means peace.
Steve, what's interesting to me in the book of Revelation says that the Antichrist, if you don't worship the peace, they'll cut your head off.
Yeah, there's a very great significance. That's a good point. It's in the Antichrist, if you don't worship him, how do you die? You chop your head off. What do the Muslims do? When the Muslims go out to win the world, to proselyte the world, they're not going to convert anybody. Remember, they revert you. Because in their belief system, everybody is born a Muslim. You were born a Muslim, Pat. So when you come back to Islam, you're just getting back to your roots. That's what they believe, that everybody is a Muslim. And so that's why if you don't believe in Allah, you're living a lie. And that's why they have to convert you or revert you, or they have to eliminate you. Anyone else?